Okay, do you know where the person with the gun is?
No. Joel, who's the victim? Is there a victim? I'm on the phone with dispatch. Larry.
It is a murder that stunned a Southern California community. 14-year-old Brandon McInerney is accused of killing 15-year-old openly gay classmate Lawrence King with 2 gunshots to the back of the head in class as horrified students looked on. Well, tonight we're waiting for this verdict in this tragic and highly debated case. Watch this piece of tape. The fate of Oxnard, California teen Brandon McInerney is in the hands of the jury. He faces a first-degree murder charge for slaying 15-year-old classmate Lawrence King. The prosecution says Brandon, now 17 and charged as an adult, is guilty of murder and a premeditated hate crime. But the defense says this is a case of manslaughter, that Brandon shot the gay student in the heat of extreme emotion. The so-called gay panic defense alleges Lawrence sexually harassed his middle school classmate until Brandon snapped and turned into a killer. Now, if he is found guilty of first-degree murder, Brandon, now, who is 17, faces a sentence of 53 years to life in prison. A lesser manslaughter charge could reduce the sentence to as few as 18 years. And here to discuss the case with me is attorney Lisa Bloom, also author of the book Think, and Neal Broverman. He is a senior editor with The Advocate magazine, and he's been following the trial. And joining me on the phone is Judy Shepard. Her 21-year-old son, Matthew, was tortured and murdered for being gay. Judy, thank you so much for joining us. This story must hit very close to home for you.
Oh, it absolutely does. It's heartbreaking. It's horrifying to think that almost 15 years later we're still dealing with the same social ignorance that we were dealing with when Matt was killed.
Well, again, I'm sorry for your loss, and thank you for joining us. Lisa, you've been following this case closely. What's this we're hearing about the gay panic defense?
One of the most obnoxious and offensive vestiges of our criminal justice system from another era is the gay panic defense. The idea that if a gay person makes a pass at you and you don't like it, you can fly into a rage, shoot and kill that person, and that's some kind of a defense. I mean, that should appall all decent people in the same way that if an African-American made a pass at a white person who's a racist and they flew into a rage and killed that person, that would not be an acceptable defense in an American courtroom. And it's time for us to get rid of it altogether.
Now, this trial is taking place just a matter of miles north of here in Los Angeles. And Neal Broverman, you were in the courtroom for the closing arguments. Can you describe the atmosphere in the courtroom for us?
It's very tense. It's very tense. The families for both the victim and the defendant are in the court, and there's no love lost between them. And it's the brother of the victim, I'm sorry, the brother of the defendant was actually in court and pleaded with the jurors to give sympathy to his brother, and he was removed, and he's been removed from the case ever since.
Yeah, was admonished by the judge not to make contact with the jury, and I think the argument here being made is, should it be murder or should it be manslaughter? My fellow attorney, Lisa Bloom, weigh in on this. It's a clear cut of first-degree murder. For me, the kid warned that he was going to shoot Lawrence King. He brought a gun to school and shot him in the back of the head.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like premeditated murder. The question I have is, why aren't the parents being held accountable for having a loaded gun accessible to an angry teen? I mean, this is a perfect storm of a defendant who was abused as a child, and there's evidence of that in the courtroom, access to guns, homophobia, a lack of tolerance teaching in the school, and that little boy. I mean, you see the face of this little boy who was murdered in a classroom full of students in a computer lab. Why? Because he was gay. This should not be happening in 2011 in our country.
I completely agree with you, and reports say that Lawrence King, the victim in the case, began wearing women's clothing, jewelry, and makeup in the 7th grade, and certainly not an excuse to kill the kid. It might be outrageous behavior, but although he was further targeted by bullies, the school could not legally stop him because of a California hate crime law that prevents gender discrimination. Now, just weeks before his shooting death, an 8th grade assistant principal sent a memo to every teacher in the school, and it read, "We have a student on campus who has chosen to express his sexuality by wearing makeup. It is his right to do so. Some kids are finding it amusing, others are bothered by it. As long as it does not cause classroom disruptions, he is within his rights." Now, Lisa, was this enough of a step for the school to take?
No. great question. This is what they call in schools an educable moment. This was a chance to talk to the students and say, you may feel uncomfortable. You may have been taught different things, but there are, a lot of different kids in this school, kids who express themselves in different ways, and everybody is equal. Teach tolerance. It's so important to do that in our country. And this case is a glaring example of how far we have to go in teaching tolerance.
Well, only days before Lawrence King was killed, it's alleged that he asked his killer, Brandon, to be his Valentine in front of some of Brandon's friends, and this embarrassed him. Well, when Ellen DeGeneres heard details of that story, she shared a message with her audience. Take a look at this.
A boy has been killed, and a number of lives have been ruined. And somewhere along the line, the killer, Brandon, got the message that it's so threatening and so awful and so horrific that Larry would want to be his Valentine, that killing Larry seemed to be the right thing to do. And when the message out there is so horrible that to be gay, you can get killed for it, we need to change the message.
Very well put by Ellen there. And I want to bring back in Judy Shepard, who is the mother of Matthew Shepard. Judy, there's no winners in this case, but where do we even begin to place the blame? Do we blame Brandon's parents? Do we blame the school, society? What's your take?
Well, there's certainly enough to spread around in this case. And in general, as long as a society we continue to demonize the gay and lesbian and transgender children in our world, then this is going to continue to happen. When we refuse to acknowledge the famous people who've made our country what it is today, or the world what it is today, or gay, lesbian, or transgender, or our artists, our athletes, people we looked up to, are either so far on one side or the other. The message is very mixed. And when our country's leaders, for example, presidential candidates sign pledges that say they want a federal marriage amendment to ban gay marriage, or anything that makes the gay community second-class citizen, sends the message to our children, to the world, that we have no respect for the gay community. And as long as that is the case, these kinds of incidents are going to happen. So it behooves parents to take the lead and educate their kids about respect and humanity. If you don't agree with the gay community, that's really your prerogative, but that does not give you the right to deny them their basic civil rights. It's just a question of being respectful and kind to other human beings.
Neal Broverman, senior editor of The Advocate, you were nodding your head in agreement with Judy there. Same question to you. I mean, how do we place any sort of blame in this situation?
Well, from some of the kids that I spoke to, there was an environment of homophobia that ran rampant in the school. So it was clear that being gay was a horrible thing at this middle school in Oxnard, California. The parents, obviously, both boys were from very troubled homes. I think the fact that this boy, the accused killer, was taught homophobia, was raised with it, and then it was so pervasive in school. There's got to be more education and training because these kids are, the worst thing to be called in school right now is gay, and that's got to change.
Well, it's just an absolute tragedy. I thank you for your insight. And next, will Brandon be convicted of first-degree murder, or will it be manslaughter in the shooting death of a gay classmate, Lawrence King? Well, my guest verdicts when we come back.
It was Larry? It was?
It's inconceivable that anybody could be that angry at a kid that was that nice. He liked music, he liked nature, he was into animals. Neighborhood animals would come and play with him.
It's sad, but it's not just this district, it's every district. Something really has to be implemented.
They just mocked him, and every time he came around, they ran and just painful things. They said painful things about him. If they came up and made fun of him, I would tell them, like, you know what? If that's how you are, that's how you are. It wasn't his fault.
Those sad words from a classmate who attended school with Lawrence King, the openly gay 8th grader who was shot and killed by his fellow student, Brandon McInerney. And he is on trial for the crime. Tonight, a California jury is deciding the accused killer's fate. Lisa, it seems like a clear-cut case of first-degree murder to me. What's your opinion, murder or manslaughter?
It sounds like murder. There's premeditation. He got the gun. He brought it to school. He hid it. He threatened this child that he was going to kill him. Premeditation can be formed in an instant. Well, this was a lot of instance adds up to premeditation. It sounds like a hate crime, too. I mean, why isn't it being prosecuted as a hate crime? And I want to say one very quick thing to Judy Shepard. Thank you for fighting for over a decade advocate for federal hate crimes legislation. Thank God that you did that. God bless you, ma'am, for doing that.
And that's a nice way to segue Judy into this. Judy, I probably know what your answer is going to be. Murder or manslaughter?
You know, there's no winners here. Both families have been devastated, lives transformed, not in a good way, forever. I'm not a legal mind. I just pray that the jury makes a decision that everyone can live with. I think there are a lot of outside factors, according to what I've read, that influenced Brandon's life. He's basically a child. But I have to agree that the evidence of premeditation and everything I've heard is just overwhelming.
And you really hit the nail on the head with the tragedy of this story. He is still only 17. He's still a minor. He was 15 when this crime was committed. But unfortunately, if you do the crime, you have to have the appropriate sentence. And Neal, I'll ask you the same question. In your opinion, first-degree murder or manslaughter?
Well, I think it is first-degree murder, and they are seeking a hate crime. I don't know if they'll come through with that. I don't know how the jury's going to react. There's been a lot of Brandon's family history being brought up, a lot of sympathies being sought for him. He did have a very difficult childhood. His father and mother were both drug addicted. I don't know if that'll play into the juror's decision. And they're also, the defense is painting Lawrence as an aggressor, and I don't know if that will be believed by the jury. So I think it's about 50-50 right now.
Well, Lisa, what about that? I mean, of course, it's the defense attorney's job to lessen this sentence from first-degree murder to manslaughter. Part of doing that job is painting the victim as the aggressor, as Neal just said.
Yeah, well, what was the aggressive act? Saying, "What's up, baby?" or "I love you, baby.
Will you be my Valentine?"
This is the kind of thing, by the way, that women have to endure every day.
Right.
But, if a male has to endure it from another male, somehow we think that justifies murder. And, of course, it doesn't. However, this is a very young defendant. He was 15 at the time of the shooting. I personally don't believe in trying juveniles as adults, but I'm in the minority. We do that in this country. The jury may have some sympathy for him and say, you know what, we don't want to convict him of first-degree murder because we know that means life in prison. We're going to come back with a manslaughter verdict. That would not surprise me. They're not supposed to do that, but it could happen.
Well, again, and it goes to the effectiveness of the attorney as well. It is his job to do the best defense that he can put up for Brandon. And as we've said many times in this show, there is no happy ending to this situation. Well, I want to say thank you for watching the show. It's some tough subjects here today, but I will be back again tomorrow. Got to bear with me for one more day, and then Dr. Drew will be back on Wednesday. So from all of us here at Dr. Drew, thanks for watching. Good night.